Everyone. So this is Trying to Understand Myself Part 2. I think it's a couple days later from Part 1. Um, so as schizophrenics, we have pretty vibrant dreams sometimes. Anybody with some kind of mental disorder might have vibrant dreams. Some people without mental disorders. But mine are always, I have a lot of nightmares. I actually take a medication for nightmares. It helps a little. I take other medications as well. But regardless, the dream that I had last night felt important because it was very coherent as far as dreams go. So I felt myself as many different people, many different men in different clips. So the start of the dream was like everybody's in about 17th, 18th, early 18th century kind of colonial garb kind of thing. Not maybe just like European garb of the 17th, 18th, 1800s. And all these men, they're all white men. There was a yellow plaster wall behind them that was decaying a bit. And just imagine, several white guys in 1700s, 1800s, gentleman garb. You could say middle class, I suppose, or upper middle class and rich. And the questioner, which was in similar garb. So basically, the seat was in front of this wall, and everybody that was in this experiment, was sitting in the same chair with the same wall. And while the questioner, which a little vague but similar garb, would ask originally, he would say, do you want to willingly participate in this experiment? And the explanation was, of course, a yes, but also, and then I'm flashing between these different men, these different white men, as they're speaking. I'm in them, but also observing them, and it flashes. But there's all these, as they say, are you ready to begin the experiment? All these men start diatribing about, how they're not guilty. Now, granted, this is after asking if they want to participate in the experiment. So I'm going from one man to another man to another man, both viewing them and being them very quickly. A lot of different pictures, a lot of different perspectives from different people. From different people in that chair, and observing them from the front, but knowing that the questioner is a little bit to their left. So if I'm viewing from their point of view, a little bit to their left, not my left. And every single one of them starts going into, this is the reason I'm not guilty. It's the youth. It's somebody else that did this. I don't know why I'm being blamed all the time. And these men are very well garbed. They're not prisoners. And they go into diatribes. They stand up. They start waving their hands like, it's, how could I be expected to do that? Somebody else should have been there. I was the only one there, and I did the right thing. Or other ones would say, it was this or that person's fault. Why didn't they do the right thing? And they never say they did the wrong thing. In fact, they try to avoid that entirely. And there's not this supposition of that they did the wrong thing, because once again, they're asked if they want to participate in the experiment, and there's no question given. They just start going into diatribes about whose fault it is. Not even each other's fault as far as the different men I'm flashing between, but the youth, their wives, society, the world, the situation, all these diatribes, flashing from one to another, so I can't get one complete one, of why they're not guilty. And then after they just huff and puff and burn themselves out and sit back in the chair, each and every single one of them nod. They didn't quite say yes before the diatribe, but after each one of them blew themselves out emotionally, talking about how it's everybody else's fault, they all sat down and gave a nod. And then that's when the questioner, he's off to their left, which right now is my right, because for some reason I feel like it's facing the other direction. They all nod, And then the questioner, same kind of drab, but just off to the side, says, okay, now, and there's this complete darkness in front of them. All they see is the questioner to their left. And they're looking forward. And he's like, look carefully into the blackness. You know, what do you, I'm paraphrasing because the idea was given in some of the words, but not necessarily every clear sentence. So, you know, look into the blackness in front of you. What do you see? Look very carefully. And they all look very carefully, and they see slight reflection in the blackness of their face. Just a very slight hint that their face is in that blackness opposite them. Very close. I guess 8 feet away. It'd be more than 6, probably about 8. That's the distance that I remember seeing through them. And they look back, they look into the darkness and like, oh, I see it. And they recognize their face. I feel the realization within each one of them as they focus on that picture of their face that's just barely visible in the blackness. But it's also animate, like it's actually there. It's not like a TV screen or something like that. Just, you know, just a dim light of their face. And then the face before them gets older and older. They get older and older. They see themselves get older and older and older as they focus in on this face. And when those men start seeing that face in front of them in the blackness, I also gain the perspective of that space that face in the blackness. So I'm looking back. I'm them. I'm looking back. I'm them. I'm looking back. And it's all flashing between all of these, at least several men. And the face starts to age and turn old. And eventually, you know, all these flashes. And then eventually it turns into a skull, but a weird skull, a skull with very interesting definition. Like you're only seeing some of the skull, but it feels like there's a face there because some of the skin, it seems like there's bone beneath some of the skin features that doesn't really make sense on a human skull. But they see themselves getting old, decaying, and then becoming a complete skull with very weird ridges and like facial features, but it's all bone. And they all, you know, I feel the fear of all of them as they're gazing into this. I feel their trepidation, but they can't look away. And every single person I was viewing this from, every single man, they just couldn't look away, and they were looking into the blackness and seeing themselves decay their very face and moving just a little bit so you know it's alive. And then they become a skull. And once they see the skull, they start beating themselves across the chest, beating their back against the wall. They're like very close to the wall, beating their heads against the wall, like beating up their bodies. And they're saying, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And they start beating themselves up, slamming themselves against the wall behind them. Some of them get up, some of them are in the chair still, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And they start screaming, hurrah. And then the helpers that were with the experimenter, I'm just going to call him that, I don't really know who or what he is, they start trying to restrain all these men, and I'm flashing between the personal view of these men and beating myself up and hitting myself against the wall, hitting my head against the wall, yelling, hurrah, hurrah. Some of them get up and start beating themselves. And then the researcher assistants, you know, try to contain them, try to pull them back down. They're struggling. And, you know, eventually I get to the last person because everything has been flashing in between. But then there's this one individual who is like, he said something like, well, I can't be violent as I am now. That wouldn't be proper. I will become violent in my werewolf form. And then I start to feel, then I kind of stick in that body. And then I start to feel the skin on my back stretch and break. And my teeth start to get longer and break through my gums. And it hurts. And it's like I'm transforming. And then before I get to that form, I wake up. And directly to my right, my bed back there, and directly to my right, I sit up, look to my right, and right in the middle of the room, there's somebody holding, now this isn't the exact one, it looked very old, but this is very much what they were holding, this kind of candle holder. And they had the same garb on, they had the same look on, and they were picking it up. They had their hand behind them, and they were picking it up off the ground, and there was a candle in it. You know, they were crouched, they were leaning over, not so much crouched down, but leaning over and bending their knees a little bit and picking this up, this candle up, and then they looked at me real quick, and then the image was gone. Now, it's not uncommon for me to see the dream around me or feel it, I mean, up to like 3 seconds after I wake up. That's probably psychosis, but this one, I remember the man, I didn't, once again, I had not been this man. He might have been the researcher. He was picking this candle up off the ground and bending over very elegantly, and then he looked at me when I saw him, and then gone. It was daytime at that point, and I definitely pulled open my blackout curtains, and I needed the light to come in. I think what sticks in my head is that hurrah as they beat themselves up and slam themselves. And, I've been realizing a lot of things recently about myself and my internal world. But nothing about me thinks that there's some violent instinct in me or something in me that wants to do harm or something like that, which would be the obvious interpretation of the dream. I know myself well enough to know that's not the case, at least in this case, but there's something that I'm missing, something that I'm not realizing, something that I have yet to see within myself or understand within myself that tells me that this dream is significant, though I don't know what part of me is telling me that. What is the deeper message of this dream? I'm still thinking about it. I don't know. All I know is that it wouldn't be the most obvious translation. There's something other than what is obvious in this dream. Fear of death would be obvious. Wanting to do violence would be obvious. It's something past that. It's something maybe behind the darkness, behind that skull, that I have yet to see or understand or be. Something that's been nagging at me, but I don't know what it is. It's like feeling like there's a fly around you, but not hearing it. That's the shadow of understanding that this dream has given me without giving it to me. I sense this realization, but I don't have it yet. I guess in coming days, we'll see what else I realize. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. Hope this has been interesting. Feel free to comment. This has been Trying to Understand Myself, Part 2. And I hope all of you have a wonderful day.